calling the gap, which is the gap between reactivity and response. And we're going to go into that a little bit more, but first I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jennanoah, and I have a background in contemplative psychology. Does anyone know what that means in this room? Raise your hand high if you know what that means. And how many of you know what mindfulness-based therapy is? Or do you think have some kind of a handle on that? Great. So Carole and I both come from Naropa University. We studied there in the contemplative psychotherapy program, which is a program that really emphasizes present moment awareness, present moment intervention, and relating to somatic experience as it's actually arising in the present moment. I have a strong interest in the topic of desire, and I'm so excited to be here. This is a really huge privilege for me to be speaking at AGPA the first time I've ever presented, and I've been attending for quite a while. So I just want to express a lot of gratitude for you all being here, and just my excitement. So my background is in contemplative psychology. I'm currently receiving a PhD, working towards receiving a PhD at Ruck University. And the closest thing in the contemplative tradition, for me, the specialization I'm really looking towards is existential psychology. So raise your hand if you know like a little bit about existential psychology. Great. I'm just trying to create a little bit of frame here so you know where we're speaking from, the angles that we're speaking from, and you know what this lens looks like. And it might be very different than your own. This is a very diverse group, and AGPA is unique in that it's an organization full of many, many different people with many different backgrounds. And that adds to a lot of great dialogue. So in addition to those two things, I also am trained in Hakomi as a therapy modality. Can you raise your hand if you know what that is? Hakomi is a body-based somatic practice as well. I'm trying to think, is there anything else I want to say about myself? Oh yeah, so the reason that I became incredibly interested in this topic is that my program at Naropa, while very rich in the exploration of mindfulness, really looking at the self of the therapist, understanding it, relating to our own triggers, our own, developing a lot of awareness around our own emotional responses, we really didn't have any courses in the topic of sexuality. And for me and my particular group of people that I was studying with, that was a big loss. And so there are some states, maybe you're from one of these states, in which it's actually a requirement that you take at least one course in sexuality and to receive a master's degree. Are you from one of those states? California being one of them. So we're in Colorado and we didn't have any education in this area. One thing that I've loved in this journey for me since leaving that program is that I've really come to understand, this is a learning process. And so we're here today, we're really excited. Who has a great deal of comfortability in relating to the topic of sexuality with clients? You feel a certain level of mastery and ability to really hold your seat when erotic topics arise.
I think I counted 5, 6 maybe.
And who finds this to be a topic that is incredibly nerve-wracking, overwhelming? It's like time to get out the referral book, possibly, when sexuality comes up. Anybody? Great. And who is somewhere maybe in between those two extremes where the topic arises, you notice your response, it's challenging, and you're learning to work with it. Great. It helps me to sort of get to know you a little bit in those ways.
Are you talking about with individuals, couples, or groups?
Right. So it's different, right? And I'm just talking about in general. Just in general. I'd like to introduce Carole at this point.
Hello. Hi. I just want to take a moment to actually look around and see faces, most of which I've never seen before, actually. So welcome. Lovely to have you here. So I thought maybe I'd introduce myself just by noticing my own body in this moment. And so noticing that like within my body, my breath, I'm working to get my breath lower. And I'm noticing a flutter, kind of from the tips of my toes right on up through my nervous system. So I'm just noticing that, feeling a quality. Would I label that anxiety? I'm not sure, but I feel some quality of maybe more heightened arousal than I did before you all arrived. And so I'm noticing that for myself. And we're going to be asking all of you to notice the same. So you might notice what's arising, not just in your mind with thoughts or judgments or whatever the case may be, but really locating yourself in your body. Take a moment to notice what's potentially arising for you. There may be nothing also. Welcome again. We continue to arrive. Part of our contemplative training is the quality that we continue to arrive again and again into our bodies and into the space with one another. Again, I'm Carole Clements, and I am an associate professor at Naropa University in the contemplative psychology program. And I had the privilege about 4 years ago to teach an advanced topic course in contemplative psychology. And I quite literally heard it come up from somewhere. I heard the name of the course, Erotic Intelligence. So I thought, I wonder what that is. And I wonder how I might actually approach teaching that. Given my work as a contemplative psychotherapist, I also have a private practice where I was doing a lot of work with relationships. I see couples who identify as monogamous, and I see couples who actually have a variety of what they would call open relationships. So I do a lot of work in the kind of the spectrum. And when I heard erotic intelligence, I thought, what an opportunity, and it made me flutter again, because I thought, what am I getting into? But I've since taught that course 4 times, and I also teach a course in sexual narratives, because I'm very interested in spoken sexuality, but also how sexuality, the story in our bodies around sexuality. I also should say that I identify as they. The pronoun actually I prefer is they, though I identify as cisgender. So, is anybody unfamiliar with the term that I just used, cisgender? Is anybody unfamiliar with that? So, we have one of the, yes?
To identify as they, cisgender, does that mean you're interested in others who identify as they?
So it gets very complicated, right, and very complex. But the reason why I actually say cisgender, and also the pronoun they, is to acknowledge that for me, they is a preference. It's a preference. There are people who actually don't have the preference of a pronoun. In other words, the binary just does not fit them at all. Okay? So I say that I'm cisgender because if somebody called me she, society would say that I'm labeled she, right? So if somebody actually called me she, I would probably be okay. I wouldn't actually be so affected or hurt or harmed by that, right? So I want to acknowledge actually my privilege as a cisgender person is why I identify that way. And in terms of my sexual attraction, which you may be asking, I would identify pansexual, right? So that I could be attracted to a variety of human beings and all different kinds of identities and manifestations, right? But part of what's important here is we're going to be doing a fishbowl, and that we're going to ask that we don't have the assumption of the binary, right? So, and that might be really new to some of you, and that's okay. Right, so that it's not about, there's not going to be a kind of policing situation, but that we want to begin the group actually in extending an open, inviting container for difference, right? However that may manifest for you. So that's actually the intention of that. And if you choose to identify your pronoun, fine, that's great. You don't have to, you're not obligated to do that. So then therefore our default will be to they at the same pronoun, right? Which means we don't assume the binary, either he or she, right? So we don't actually have to, maybe the invitation is to not limit ourselves. Even this is like, I don't know exactly what you're talking about, or that might be could be bringing up all kinds of things. say about myself. I think that's enough, right?
You didn't define cisgender.
Pardon me?
You didn't say it was cisgender.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. So cisgender, a person who identifies as cisgender.
How do you spell that?
C-I-S, cis means on the side of, on the same side of gender, okay? So somebody who identifies as cisgender would identify with the gender they were assigned at birth. Most of us have been assigned at birth that gender, right? You see penis or vulva, oh, one or the other, boy or girl, right? That's what we're looking for. So that's the binary. And a cisgender, somebody who identifies as cisgender, would be on the side of that, so that would relate, like the gender that they feel they are, that they believe they are, relates to genitalia.
And this was really actually quite important in discussing topics of desire. One of the reasons it's really important is that one of the goals when topics of desire arise is creating a sense of safety. And so topics of really getting clear about the way that we are viewing, the way that we are making assumptions, those assumptions can actually get in the way of a sense of safety in the group if it's not necessarily clarified ahead of time. So if you're specifically leading a group on sexuality, identifying gender pronouns is really, really a way in which you can really create more inclusivity in your groups. And so I identify as she, her, and hers. And this is not a workshop about gender, but we think that this is really actually quite important in terms of creating a container. Our workshop is about straddling the gap. So just in that say straddling the gap, you're noticing what comes up in your system, in your own body. Yeah, we're about to, in a very short amount of time, we're gonna do a little bit of a fishbowl here. And there's an invitation. The invitation for those who are in the fishbowl is to really notice your system, your body, and the difference between what is a response and what is a reaction. And really hanging out in the gap between those two activities. Hanging out in the space between. And so that's also an invitation that is extended to those of you who are on the outside of the fishbowl.
You're right here. Welcome. We actually will have an observer, and so that's for the observer when he runs.
We're going to be having an observer pop in just a little bit, and they're not looking at you, they're looking closely at us. So yes, desire and the somatic, actually intelligence that is inside the clinician around desire. And there is a tendency at times to either repress those sensations, the sensation of desire, or to actually reach and grasp and react and respond rather quickly. And so in the lens of actually contemplative psychotherapy, there's this idea that there's a deep wisdom in the connection to your body, the connection to your body as a clinician, but also to encourage that within your clients, that they too have this deep wisdom within the knowledge of their own system, that it's a bit of a barometer. There's a basic intelligence there, a wisdom that's a lot deeper than often the words that they're saying.
Can I just add something to that? So in thinking about desire also, desire is different from liking. It's actually a state of wanting. Okay, so it's not just liking, it's actually wanting. So it naturally sets us up biochemically to reach. Okay, so it's like, if you're wanting, there's actually this movement, right? Well, that's how I'm actually demonstrating. Your body might not do that, but there's some quality of like moving, right? Something's starting to move and I'm wanting to go. Wanting actually in our system will propel us, right? It's a bit of a propulsion system. You might think that way. And I'm probably dating myself, but I said this one other time, and it's coming up again. Does anybody remember Weebles? Like Weebles, right? And like they did this thing, like Weebles wobble, but they don't fall, right?
They don't fall down.
Some of you may not know what I'm talking about, but there's like this energy, so actually from a contemplative perspective, we're looking, there's the gap, right? It's like it's actually an allowing that not to discharge so quickly, right? To actually, like resolution is actually in the weebling, so to speak. That's actually where resolution lies, right? which is challenging for us to hold as clinicians and challenging for clients to hold, right? So it's like just noticing what arises with that idea.
Our space is so limited here, and I feel like there's a number of topics we would like to jump into. But in order to really dive into the group, I'm just going to briefly, and these are in your packet as well, but the objectives here, to create an environment conducive to expressing desire in the present moment, to differentiate between reactivity and response, and to demonstrate present moment intervention. So we have a time boundary. Our group will be about 45 minutes. We're going to really stick to that. And in just a moment, we're about to ask a few of you to step forward as volunteers. So what comes up? Just in that statement. Is there an instant knowing of yes? Is there an instant knowing of no way?
Conflict between desire and fear.
All right.
Excitement.
Jittery.
Very rich places to be, very fertile.
We ask during our fishbowl that you speak from your own experience, and we just offer that as a strong preference. Well, it'll come up if we feel like you're stating a norm for a population that's larger than yourself. We may ask you to do that directly. And confidentiality is written here, but it was very clear to us, very clearly stated to us early this morning that is not an assumption of these fishbowls that this is actually a confidential environment, which is unfortunate for a number of reasons. But I say that here because I would like to create a norm in this group that we do agree not to go out and say the things that we've heard in this room. However, this is recorded, and so